It started with a sentence so casual, it almost sounded kind. "Hey, could you pop into the small conference room at 9? Just a quick meeting." That's how the end of 8 years usually begins. Softly. No warning, no drama. Just a calendar ping labeled sync. I'd been up all night finishing the monthly performance deck, the one that had been postponed twice because upper management wanted a tighter story. The story was mine. Every slide built line by line from data I'd cleaned myself. My hands still smelled faintly of the printer ink because I'd gone old school, printed one clean copy to mark edits. I remember the way the fluorescent light made the paper look too white, like it didn't belong to me anymore. 8:53 a.m. The office smelled like burnt coffee and toner. I stood outside the glass door of conference room 3B, trying to smooth a wrinkle from my shirt with the back of my hand. Inside, through the reflection, I saw silhouettes. More people than I expected. HR. Finance. My manager, Jenna, in her pale blazer that made her look like she'd been cut out of the background. She was laughing at something, or pretending to. When she saw me, she smiled the way people do when they already decided what role you're about to play. "Hey, come in. Won't take long." The room was colder than usual. Someone had set up a projector. I saw my deck, my font, my charts on the screen. But the title slide didn't say Operations Efficiency Report, Q4. It said Leadership Transition Plan. There's a certain silence that only happens in moments when you realize you've been rehearsing the wrong scene. Everyone talks, but the sound arrives too late, warped by disbelief. Jenna cleared her throat. "So first of all, we just want to recognize your incredible contributions. You've basically built this process from scratch. Honestly, none of this would run without you." She paused, eyes darting to the HR rep. "Which is why we're so excited to have you support the new team lead as we scale this further." That was the sentence that broke something I didn't know was holding me together. Support the new team lead. The new team lead, Ryan, was sitting 2 seats away, straightening his tie, too nervous to look at me. He'd been here barely a year. I'd trained him myself. I heard myself say, "Congratulations," and it came out steady, maybe even polite. People love politeness in moments of cruelty. It helps them feel civilized. Jenna continued talking about alignment, culture fit, fresh perspective. Words that feel like clean glass until you realize you're the one being erased behind it. They gave me a list of tasks, transition documents, training sessions, a 2-week overlap. HR slid a folder toward me as if it were radioactive. Inside, a revised job description, same pay, new title, Operations Support Specialist. A demotion dressed in neutral language. For a second, I couldn't move. I noticed small details instead. The way the projector fan hummed unevenly, the faint scent of Ryan's cologne, synthetic citrus, the condensation ring his water bottle left on the table, overlapping my printed agenda. I wanted to ask why, not in anger, just clarity. But Jenna avoided eye contact the way guilty people avoid mirrors. "It's not about performance," she said quickly. "You're great, really. But leadership is also about energy." Energy. That's what they call it when someone else fits their reflection better. I nodded once. That seemed to satisfy everyone. The HR woman smiled, relieved. Ryan mumbled something like, "I'll try to keep things running smooth." He meant well. He always did. When the meeting ended, people stood too fast. Chairs scraped, papers shuffled. Jenna reached out as if to pat my shoulder, but thought better of it. I collected the only thing that felt mine, the printed agenda with the meeting timestamp. 9:02 a.m. I slipped it into my folder, careful not to fold the corner. Outside, the office hum continued as if nothing monumental had happened. Screens glowed. Someone laughed near the coffee machine. Slack notifications popped like static. I walked back to my desk, row C, far wall, under the vent that always hissed. My nameplate still said Senior Operations Analyst. The word senior looked like a joke now. I sat down slowly, exhaled once, and opened my inbox. 40 unread messages, 2 of them from Jenna, timestamped the night before. Subject lines identical. Review before sync. They were drafts of the same deck, my deck, shared from her account. In the metadata, I could see who had edited what. She'd changed the footer to her initials. That's when the realization hit, clean and cold. This wasn't impulsive. It had been built quietly, spreadsheet by spreadsheet, like a structure erected around me until I couldn't see the exit. I didn't delete anything. I didn't write an angry email. I just started backing up files. Every project folder, every process document I'd authored, every audit trail with my credentials. The system clock read 9:47 when IT pinged me for a brief permissions update. They were fast, faster than I expected. I smiled to myself, closed the remote drive, and thought, 8 years for a promotion, 10 minutes for erasure. But not everything vanishes that easily. I folded the agenda in half, slipped it into my jacket pocket, and walked out for coffee. The hallway lights buzzed overhead, the same way they always did when the building's air conditioning cycled. Outside, the cold morning air hit my face. For the first time in months, I felt awake. Inside the folder next to the paper was my keycard, still active. I held it between my fingers, flipped it once like a coin, and smiled. If they thought that meeting was the end of my story, they hadn't met the version of me who doesn't need permission anymore. People think betrayal feels like a knife. It doesn't. It feels like paperwork. Emails not copied to you. Calendar invites that stop arriving. Reports with your name quietly deleted from the author field. It happens slowly enough that you start doubting your own memory. 6 months before that meeting, I'd started noticing small fractures in how things worked. Jenna had joined as our department manager a year prior, all buzzwords and smiles. A self-proclaimed culture architect. I was naive enough to believe that hard work was a language everyone respected. I didn't realize I was being studied. The first sign came with the weekly ops sync. I'd built those meetings myself. 30 minutes every Thursday, metrics-driven, clean agenda. One morning, I opened the invite and saw my name listed as optional. Jenna said it was just a calendar mix-up. It wasn't. I started arriving 10 minutes early anyway, sitting quietly at the end of the table while she presented my charts. She'd replace technical terms with vague enthusiasm. We optimized throughput, and the room would nod. The execs didn't need details. They needed comfort. I gave her the numbers that made her sound credible. That was my mistake. Over time, I learned what kind of power she understood. Perception. So I built mine somewhere she'd never look. Inside the system. There were 3 leverage points. I didn't call them that then, but I see it clearly now. First, compliance logs. We'd been under constant audit pressure after a failed vendor review, and I'd created a reconciliation tracker that connected internal approvals to external vendor records. It was ugly, nested formulas, manual checks, but it worked. No one else could balance it without breaking the logic. When the auditors ran their test samples, the only name they saw on the metadata was mine. Second, relationships. Jenna cultivated visibility. I cultivated trust. I returned client calls after hours, fixed billing anomalies before they escalated, remembered birthdays of vendor contacts no one else bothered with. When they needed answers, they came to me, not the org chart. Third, documentation. I standardized every workflow into what I called SOPs, short for Standard Operating Procedures. Each was time-stamped, version-controlled, and embedded with my initials. Jenna thought it was bureaucracy. I knew it was insurance. Still, none of that felt like armor when the daily grind swallowed you whole. I worked 12-hour days, trained 2 analysts, and wrote scripts that saved hundreds of manual entries. Jenna called me the backbone of operations. Then she stopped calling me anything at all. By March, I'd become invisible. She'd started bringing Ryan, the golden boy, into her one-on-ones. He was young, ambitious, and fluent in the dialect of management optimism. She praised his leadership energy. I was told to mentor him on the technical side, while Jenna handled strategic development. Translation: you'll build, he'll present. I watch them from the hallway sometimes. Ryan laughing too loudly, Jenna touching his arm to emphasize a point. They'd leave meetings late, and I'd stay behind, cleaning up the spreadsheets she'd butchered with bad formulas. I remember one Friday evening vividly. She stopped by my desk with her coat half on. "Hey, can you fix the dashboard before Monday? Ryan's leading the Monday call, and we just need the visuals to pop." "Sure," I said, even though my eyes were burning. "Thanks. You're such a lifesaver." She meant it as praise. It sounded like a chain. That weekend, I stayed in the office until 2 a.m. The janitor nodded to me on his last round. I'd gotten used to the quiet, just the hum of the vending machine and the faint click of my keyboard. I sent the deck at 2:13 a.m. Monday morning. The timestamp would later matter more than I knew. When Ryan presented it that morning, he called it our team's collective effort. Jenna smiled like a proud mentor. No one asked whose effort it had really been, but I kept notes, always. Each week, I exported change logs and saved them to a private drive. Each time she rewrote one of my reports in her voice, I saved the before and after versions. Each optional invite became a calendar screenshot. By May, the tension had a rhythm. She'd praise me privately, diminish me publicly. When the VP congratulated me on hitting a delivery milestone, Jenna jumped in with, "Ryan's leadership has really brought the team together." Ryan looked uncomfortable, but he didn't correct her. Most people don't. Silence is easier when it benefits you. There were smaller humiliations, too. Once she asked me to fetch coffee before a client call, because you make it best. Another time, she corrected my wording in an email before forwarding it to leadership, adding typos I'd never make. Each time I told myself it didn't matter, that my work spoke for itself. I was wrong. Work doesn't speak. People do. Still, I stayed calm. Not out of fear, out of calculation. Every process she claimed credit for lived in systems that required my credentials to function. Every metric she bragged about was anchored to data I'd built. And I had an ally, even if he didn't know it yet. Noah, the junior analyst. He'd joined fresh out of college, sharp but quiet. I saw pieces of myself in him before the cynicism set in. He asked too many questions, which made Jenna impatient. So I took him under my wing, teaching him how the systems actually worked. Not the polished version, the real one. By July, he could reconcile a full vendor log blindfolded. I made sure every process ran through both our accounts. If I disappeared, the work would still point back to my methods. Then came the small test, the audit prep. Jenna delegated it to Ryan, of course, but when he tried to pull my data, half the formulas broke. He called me in a panic. "Man, it's not calculating right," he said. I leaned over his screen. "That's because you're missing the bridge file. It's under the restricted directory." "Can you send it?" "Sure," I said, but I didn't. I fixed it myself and sent him the output. Jenna called it team collaboration. That's when I knew how this would end. She was constructing a narrative where I was the workhorse, loyal and silent, while Ryan was the visionary she developed. A clean promotion story for leadership. I could have confronted her. I could have quit. But I wanted her to show everyone who she really was before I spoke. So when the calendar invite came, sync 9 a.m., I didn't resist. I printed my last deck, fixed my collar, and walked in like a man heading into weather he'd already mapped. When she announced Ryan's promotion, I didn't flinch, because by then I already had everything I needed: evidence, relationships, and a reputation she couldn't rewrite. That's what betrayal feels like. Not a knife, a mirror. And soon enough, everyone in that room would have to look into it. For the first 2 weeks after the meeting, I operated like a ghost that still had system access. No one knew what to do with me. Jenna had her new team lead, Ryan, who walked around with the shaky confidence of someone who's been handed a sword they can barely lift. HR thought the transition was complete. It had downgraded my permissions, but not the right ones, and the rest of the office treated me like a museum exhibit, something awkward you glance at and then pretend isn't there. I kept my routine. Coffee at 8:20, log in by 8:30, headphones on. Only now I wasn't building dashboards. I was building an escape route. Every piece of digital history mattered. Metadata, audit trails, access logs, message threads. I exported everything that could tell a story. My story. Not the one they'd scripted for me in that transition meeting. Jenna liked to believe she was strategic, but she didn't understand data. She understood optics, how things looked in PowerPoint slides, not how they were structured underneath. So she missed the patterns that started forming. System errors, inconsistent timestamps, clients asking questions she couldn't answer. I didn't sabotage her. I didn't need to. When you remove the person who quietly fixed everything for years, gravity does the rest. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday morning. Ryan burst into my cubicle, face pale. Hey, the billing reconciliation tool isn't syncing. Jenna said you might know what's wrong. I looked up slowly. Did you update the vendor map? He blinked. The what? I sighed, pushed back from my chair, and followed him to his desk. On his screen, I saw the error immediately. A broken reference to a hidden sheet, labeled Root Template V2. That file didn't live on the shared drive. It lived on mine. It's not public, I said. Can you make it public? I could, but I'd need Jenna's approval. He nodded too quickly, walked off to find her. She didn't come back. She never did when things broke. By lunch, the entire billing report was delayed 3 hours. The VP asked what happened. Jenna said, "We're fine. Just minor data consolidation." The VP frowned. "Wasn't that your guy's specialty?" She smiled tightly. "He's transitioning to a support role." That word again. Support. It sounded so clean, so harmless. Like a pillow pressed just hard enough to muffle. I didn't correct her. I just opened a new notebook that night and titled it Pressure Points. Each page got a name, a date, and a weakness. Jenna's first entry, dependence masked as control. The second week, Noah noticed the shift. He came by my desk after hours. "You okay, man?" I shrugged. "I'm fine. How are your logs?" He grinned. "Perfect. I triple-checked them. I think I'm starting to get your system." "Good," I said. "Keep everything documented. Don't delete old versions." He hesitated. "Something's coming, isn't it?" I didn't answer, but he stayed late every night after that. He didn't even know he was becoming part of the plan. Meanwhile, Jenna's confidence was peaking. She'd started sitting in executive huddles, using words she barely understood. Operational synergy, cross-functional pivot, lean governance. She was parroting them from my SOPs, just without context. The execs nodded, impressed. The usual corporate theater, but the cracks were spreading. One client, a logistics firm out of Dallas, called me directly. "Hey, you're still the point of contact, right?" "Not officially," I said. "Well, someone messed up the vendor file. Jenna sent a version that's missing a month of entries. We need it fixed before Friday. I'll check what I can." That was the first time I realized how much leverage silence gives you. Jenna had the title, but I still had the trust. People came to me because they wanted problems solved, not managed. By Friday, she'd called 3 emergency huddles to realign deliverables. Her favorite phrase. I sat through them, quiet, typing notes that would later become evidence. She kept saying, "We need proactive accountability." The irony almost made me laugh. That weekend, I backed up everything again, including internal chat transcripts. There was one line from a leadership channel that I'll never forget. Jenna. "He's great technically, but lacks upward energy. I need someone dynamic next to me." The VP reacted with a thumbs-up emoji. That was the culture in 4 words. Upward energy over results. The following Monday, I met a client operations director for coffee. Off-site, neutral ground. I'd helped his company survive an audit nightmare the year before. He looked at me across the table. "So, I heard you're not leading the ops team anymore." "Correct," he smirked. "That's a mistake. We follow people who deliver, not job titles." He stirred his coffee. If you ever leave, call me first. That line stayed with me. We follow people, not logos. When I returned to the office, Jenna was in her glass box of an office, giving Ryan a pep talk. The irony was cinematic. Her reflection in the glass, gesturing confidently while the monitors behind her flickered with red error messages. She didn't even notice when the system crashed, but everyone else did. Slack lit up. Server 4B offline. Vendor sync failed. Missing schema reference. She stormed out. What's going on? I looked up, calm. You removed the wrong data bridge. Her face flushed. You should have told us it was critical. I did. In the transition notes. I didn't see those. I sent them to your personal drive per your instructions. Silence. Then she said it. Fix it. I fixed it, of course. Took 30 minutes. No heroics. Just control. That night, I wrote in my notebook. Pressure point nor two. She can't tell competence from control. The next few weeks blurred. HR checked in to ensure a smooth transition. Jenna told them everything was thriving. Ryan tried to keep up, but every problem he solved created two more. Meanwhile, the data told a different story. Delayed reconciliations, missing audit timestamps, invoice errors. I didn't leak anything. I just kept everything transparent. For once. And then, without warning, Jenna scheduled a meeting with the board liaison. To present our Q4 wins. I smiled when I saw the invite. Because I knew the board's internal auditors would ask one question Jenna couldn't answer. Who built the reconciliation logic for the vendor audit? I had the receipts, literally. That was the day I stopped being afraid. Not because I planned revenge, but because I realized the truth. They'd built their success on something they didn't understand. And systems always reveal their creators. Eventually, the meeting invite arrived on a Monday at 6:47 a.m. Subject line, Q4 Success Review, Board Liaison Prep. Presenter, Jenna M., Director of Operations. Attendees, VP, Finance Head, HR Partner, and me. I wasn't supposed to be there, technically. I was just support. The kind of person they list last, out of courtesy. The way you thank catering after a wedding speech. But I accepted, and I smiled when I saw the attached deck. The file name was Leadership Impact. Istashur JM Final 2, PPTX. Inside it were my graphs, my formulas, my annotations. She'd stripped my name from every slide, but she hadn't removed the hidden comments. In the slide metadata, one line still lingered. Double check with my name before sharing externally. Data integrity, not yet verified. It was timestamped 3 days earlier. By the time the boardroom filled, Jenna was already performing. She stood at the head of the table, posture perfect, her voice smooth and precise. I'm proud to present a quarter of incredible transformation, she began, clicking to the first slide. Our new team structure has driven measurable efficiency. The VP nodded along. The finance head leaned back, arms crossed, scanning the numbers. I stayed silent, hands folded, taking notes in a small leather notebook. Slide after slide, she painted herself as the architect of stability, the fixer of chaos. Our client satisfaction rating jumped 12%, she said. That was true, but it had jumped before the transition, not after. Our audit compliance is at 100%. Also true, because I had completed the final audit handoff myself. She just didn't know the auditors copied me on every chain. Then came the question I'd been waiting for. From the audit liaison. Impressive. Could you walk us through the reconciliation model used for vendor validation? We'd like to standardize it across other divisions. A tiny silence, just long enough to register. Jenna smiled, too bright. Of course. Ryan, would you like to take that one? Ryan blinked, froze. Sure. So it's a dynamic model that, balances external vendor inputs with internal data mapping. The liaison frowned. And the source logic? Ryan looked at Jenna. She looked at me. Finally, she forced a laugh. Actually, my name here was deeply involved in that technical side. He can probably explain it better. That's when the room tilted. Every head turned. I kept my tone level. The logic is proprietary to the internal framework I built during the compliance remediation phase 2 years ago. It's all documented in the SOP archive. The liaison nodded. Excellent. Could you send that documentation to our governance mailbox? Jenna jumped in. We'll consolidate and send it as a package. I smiled. It's already consolidated. I'll forward it directly. For a second her smile faltered. Just a flicker, but enough. The rest of the meeting dissolved into awkward applause and forced small talk. But the seed had been planted. By the next day, I got a quiet email from the audit team. Could we confirm authorship of the reconciliation logic and associated process documentation? I replied with the metadata and timestamps. No commentary, no emotion, just data. The next morning, they escalated to the board. Jenna panicked quietly. You could hear it in the tone of her footsteps. Fast, clipped, no rhythm. She called an emergency huddle with HR. I don't understand how this became a thing, she said, pacing. Ryan looked like he wanted to disappear. The liaison just asked for clarification, right? Yes, but he looped in compliance. They're requesting version histories. Her voice dropped. Who else did he copy? Procurement, legal, finance. She went pale. I kept my face neutral, taking notes as always. That afternoon, IT locked down her access for review. They said it was routine. It never is. I didn't celebrate. I didn't even smile. I just went home, poured black coffee, and opened my notebook to a new page. Pressure point. Number 3. Integrity leaves a trail. Within a week, the entire operations division was under light governance review. They found mismatched expense claims, duplicated KPI slides, and contradictory statements between Jenna's decks and the financial logs. Nothing catastrophic, just enough to make her credibility look selective. The VP tried to contain it. Let's not overreact, he told the board. We're still hitting targets. The board disagreed. They asked for a process audit. When the auditors reached out, I didn't volunteer anything. I simply answered questions factually. Who authored which files, when, and why? Every timestamp told the truth better than I ever could. Jenna called me into her office 2 days later. Her voice was brittle. I need to know what you said to them. The truth, she exhaled sharply. You're trying to make me look incompetent. I looked her in the eye for the first time in months. You did that yourself. She flinched like I'd slapped her. For once, there was no script left for her to read. The next week was chaos wrapped in silence. The VP stopped looping her into board calls. Finance took over client escalations. HR whispered in hallways. Ryan avoided eye contact completely. Noah kept his head down, but every time our eyes met, there was a flicker of quiet understanding. Then one Thursday afternoon, I got an email from HR titled Confidential Discussion Regarding Transition Plan. They offered me a retention bonus if I agreed to sign a non-disclosure agreement and assist with rebuilding process documentation. Translation: help clean up the mess quietly, then disappear. I read it twice, closed the email, and drafted my reply. Thank you for the offer. I will decline. However, I'd be open to discussing an external engagement focused on rebuilding operational governance under board supervision. That would protect both the company and its clients. No threats, no anger, just structure. The next morning, the board liaison replied directly. Let's talk. 2 weeks later, the offer was formalized. A 6-month consulting contract, new rate, new reporting line, directly to the audit chair. When Jenna heard, she tried to act unfazed. That's great. Maybe you can help us fix the systems. Her voice cracked on help. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because for the first time in 8 years, I wasn't under anyone's management. I was the governance. That night, I wrote one final line in my notebook before closing it. Pressure point, number 4. Karma doesn't shout, it documents. And it was already writing itself. The last day felt wrong from the start. Too bright, too calm. The kind of morning where the world pretends everything's fine. I came in early before the lights fully warmed the hallways, before the office chatter began its daily hum. The security guard nodded as I swiped my card for the last time. It still beeped green. It wouldn't after today. My desk was half empty already. A coffee mug, a framed photo from a long-forgotten team retreat, the notebook I never let out of my sight. Everything else was backed up, cataloged, sealed. I packed slowly, not because I was sentimental, but because I wanted to remember how the silence felt. At 10:03, HR pinged me. Exit meeting in conference 2A, please bring your badge and any remaining company property. They always word it like an apology. The HR partner was there, polite, robotic, performing empathy like a procedure. Jenna wasn't. That surprised me. Or maybe it didn't. I signed the forms, handed over the badge, and thanked them for the opportunity to contribute. They smiled with visible relief, the way people do when they're glad the storm passed over them instead of through them. Outside, the office smelled of printer ink and burnt toast from the break room. I passed Ryan's cubicle, spotless except for a framed Team Leadership Award plaque. I wondered if he'd still think it meant something in a month. Noah caught me near the elevators. Is it true? He asked. What? That you're coming back? I smiled. Not the way they think. He hesitated. Jenna's been acting weird. She told us we have to wait for new directives from governance. You'll understand soon, I said. Keep your logs clean. He laughed softly. You and your logs. Logs never lie, I said. By noon I was gone. A cardboard box under my arm. The winter wind cutting across my face. It didn't feel like defeat. It felt like an ending that had taken its time to arrive. 2 weeks later, I walked back into the same building. This time through the visitor entrance. The badge they gave me now had a different color. White, with the logo of the consulting firm that held my new contract. Role, Program Lead, Operational Governance Initiative. Reporting line, Board Audit Chair. Same building, same air. But the view was different now. They'd set me up in a temporary office on the mezzanine, overlooking the operations floor. From there I could see everything. The rows of desks, the glowing monitors, the rhythm of a company pretending it hadn't been shaken. At 9 a.m. sharp, the first governance session began. Jenna walked in last. Her posture was still perfect, but her voice had changed. It was quieter, clipped. She greeted me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Good to have you here, she said, sitting across from me. I returned the smile. Happy to help bring some clarity. The room filled with department heads, compliance officers, and board liaisons. I projected the first slide of the new framework. Operational Integrity Alignment. Today, I began, we'll be reviewing the systems and processes that ensure accuracy, accountability, and transparency across departments. Every word was calm, neutral, professional, but beneath the surface, every sentence was a mirror angled toward her. As I walked through the new controls, I saw her shrinking in real time. Each policy, each audit checkpoint, each monthly reconciliation was something she had once dismissed as too detailed. Now it was gospel, approved by the board, stamped with my initials. Ryan sat 2 seats from her, flipping through the printed handout. His eyes widened when he saw one section labeled Data Validation Workflow. Original author, my name. I didn't look at him. I didn't need to. When the session ended, people lingered, shaking hands, talking about process excellence. Jenna stayed behind, pretending to check her notes. Finally, she looked up. You really turned this into a show, didn't you? I kept my tone even. No, I turned it into documentation. Her jaw tightened. You could have warned me? I did. Repeatedly. You just called it negativity. She didn't answer, just gathered her papers and left, heels echoing down the hall like punctuation marks. After she was gone, Noah came in with a grin he tried to hide. She looked like she wanted to melt into the carpet. Don't enjoy it too much, I said. Focus on the work. He hesitated. Is she going to be okay? She'll survive, I said. That's her skill. Survival, just not leadership. That afternoon, I sent the board the first governance summary. It wasn't vindictive. It was precise, measured, irrefutable. Numbers never raise their voice. They just stand there until you look at them. A week later, the company released an internal memo. Effective immediately, departmental oversight will transition under a new compliance-driven model. Jenna M. will remain as director, but report to the external governance lead for strategic alignment. In plain English, she kept her title but lost her power. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I just finished my coffee, saved the document, and closed my laptop. Outside, dusk was settling. The same building, the same parking lot, but it felt lighter somehow. Noah waved from across the lot. Ryan avoided eye contact. I didn't blame him. He was young. He'd learn the difference between loyalty and convenience someday. At home that night, I placed my old keycard next to my notebook. Both relics now. I opened to the last blank page and wrote, 8 years, 1 meeting, a quiet exit, a louder return. Karma doesn't need witnesses. Sis, only records. Then I closed it for good this time. The next morning, I arrived early again, 8:20. Same routine, same coffee. The office was waking up. Through the glass, I saw Jenna sitting in a governance meeting, reading from the playbook I'd written. Every sentence, every policy, every metric. She didn't see me pass by. I didn't stop to watch. For the first time in years, I didn't owe the room anything. Not my silence, not my effort, not my forgiveness. Just the truth. Written, time-stamped, and delivered.